Hey guys, it's me Chandragan, and today's video is about Topaz. So like usual, I will do my post review about using a character more than a week, and this is actually more the user experience than scientifically or mathematically, and I will give like usual like pros and cons and something like that. But instead of just usual review, we take one topic and discuss about something. And our topic for this Topaz post release, which is Topaz is actually a disappointing DPS or it's just like a unique DPS? So let's get started. So let's begin with the pros about Topaz. So the first noticeable thing when you use Topaz is that he buffed the follow-up attacker though. So the follow-up attacker in here like Clara or Jingyuan. So basically the buff is a lot or at least noticeable though. Something that I know right away because like my Clara never deal this such of damage. Suddenly why suddenly it's go up so high, then wow, that actually Topaz really buff like follow-up attacker though. So if some of you may be curious in terms of like damage comparison, this is may not valid for all account but only in case of my account. Like I try to do tests because I'm curious like what is my Clara damage with using ultimate without Topaz buff. With Topaz buff, it's actually quite noticeable, at least for me though, it's quite noticeable. And the next one, if you wonder how about Topaz SP management or the SP consumption, and in my experience that Topaz is actually relatively good in terms of SP management. She can be like neutral or can be SP positive. It actually very depends on your playstyle. So basically the skill is only very useful. It's to mark the enemy or to move the target low, the one that you want to give the mark. So that's usually the most kinda impactful. If you decide to kinda SP positive, you can keep using basic attack because Topaz basic attack can trigger follow-up attack and also can advance forward Nambi. So that's also not really a big deal if you decide to not use skill. But in other hand also, if you decide to use skill, it's also quite important because it gives more damage though. So yeah, in the end, it depends on playstyle. It either can be positive or just neutral, but overall pretty good in terms of SP and management. And the third point, she is actually flexible in terms of roles. Although she is Han that usually meant to be DPS, but she can work as a even DPS, sub DPS, or even buffer for follow-up attacker though. In the DPS standpoint or hyper carry standpoint, yeah, her damage is just nothing crazy, but it's actually decent enough to clear like MOC by herself though. And also that if you want to pair as a sub DPS, just put in the very random team, it can also work though because she just does her own thing. Just as long as you keep the right mark, like hit the right mark, and then she will do follow-up attack, do the ultimate, and she just does everything by herself without interrupting other gimmick though. And that's actually good though to just put with random. I even put with like Danheng, even like Jinglu, it still works though, surprisingly. And of course if you want to make her as a buffer in follow-up attacker, and that's of course become the best one for her. So the next one, which is, this is actually can be double-edged sword, either can be pros or cons, but yeah, on certain conditions she can become pros, which is she is single target focus that can become good for like enemy like boss, something like that, because she pretty good doing job at hitting single target. That's quite good damage also. Yeah, similar kind of Sele, but of course Sele I think is more. And the last things that I want to say about the pros about her is that she can be even better when future follow-up attacker release. So you can expect Topaz will be shine even more if there's a future kind of more follow-up attacker that they release. It's quite similar with Kafka. Like right now Green iPhone finally released, so Kafka become even more half useful to buff this kind of DOT team. So that's a good thing about Topaz. Now we'll talk about the cons about her. So the first thing that quite unfortunate for her is that she doesn't have any dedicated relic, at least for now or yet though, because the best relic for her right now is 2-piece, and that even show like there's none of relic that match 100% her kit in terms of full sets though, because doesn't have any like sets that really dedicated in terms of like follow-up attack. Even the 4-piece of fire, it's mostly about skill and kinda using ultimate and increase fire. It's not really buffing her follow-up attack damage though, so it's not really that we can say even the best one though. So it's kinda nerfing her right now actually. So yeah, in this part also we'll talk a little bit short about her build itself. So I already mentioned before, the best relic set for her is basically 2-piece. So the best one is 2-piece of Firesmith or the fire set, and the 2-piece of the musketeer though. That's also can you change with the 2-piece of the speed set, which is the messenger traversing hacker space. That also can work. So any combination within those two, usually that's the best set for Topaz. But other than that, if you maybe have a solid 4-piece of musketeer, that can also work for Topaz though. As for planner and the link crop sets, the one you can use the best, which is Inner Salsoto, because this is usually good for buff the follow-up attacker though. Other than that, Special Link Station still good in general because it's just straightforward, usually buffing attack, and that's good for the Topaz itself. And you kinda want also like higher speed in Topaz, so you pretty much can meet the requirement. Other than that, if you don't have, you can use Achilles also, because Achilles can buff the overall attack of your team, which is still pretty nice for her. As for the relic main set, let's start with the fit. Basically for the fit, I prefer for speed, because speed usually can attack more frequent, can get more energy, so you can ultimate also faster. And yeah, usually I prefer to do speed, but or if you already have enough speed maybe from your subset, like around 130ish, something like that, or you just care about doing more damage and less frequent like attacking, then you can equip attack actually. For the body, it's actually very depends. If you need more crit rate, then go for crit rate. If you need more crit damage, then go for crit damage. As for a planner set, the best one of course is fire damage bonus, but if you don't have that, you can try to use attack percentage though, especially if you have godly roll. At least it can be a decent alternative. For the link rope, I prefer attack percentage, so she can deal more damage, so I prefer that compared to get faster ERR, because I feel like Topaz gimmick more into follow-up attack, so ultimate is not a very top priority, so I go with attack. As for Lightcon, of course the best one is her signature Lightcon, because increase like crit rate and follow-up attack for even the overall team, which is actually good. But other than that, if you don't have that, you can use the Sleep Like the Dead, because increase also crit in general, so it's pretty much good for herself. For the free-to-play Lightcons, or at least 4-star, so it can be easier to obtain, the best one can be very situational. If you can meet the requirement all the time, the best one of course the Lightcon for the Hunt one, which is cruising in the Stellar Sea. So if you can keep defeating the enemy, that will be the best one if you can R5. But other than that, if you want something more consistent that you don't want to depend on like requirement, then go for sword play, because if you hit the same target, you will increase your damage, which is Topaz can very easily to do that, that's very good though for her though, if you can make R5 sword play. And actually that's only two that actually very decent for Topaz, but if you really don't have both of them, then you can try the only Silence Remains, because at least that's solid, that will increase your attack by 16% on the R1, and of course if you have your enemy, you can get crit rate, which is still pretty decent for Topaz. So that's about the build. Now we're back to our main topic, and we talk about the cons again. The second point about her cons is that she's basically, as a free-to-play player, her personal damage as a DPS, it's not really that you can say impressive or you can say OP, especially if you already use like in Danheng Imimeter Lune. You can feel like, okay, it's not as high as like them though, but it's still decent. It's just mid, but I mean it's mid, it's not bad thing. It's just like okay, decent, passable. Yeah, that's how I can describe. But it's not like you can feel like wow. It's no, you can feel like that, especially if you already use Danher or Jingli. But of course, I say again, it's quiet also makes sense, because she provide buff to the follow-up attacker, so it's kind of like, how to say, trade-off or balancing. And the third point, which is she's actually not great in multiple enemy, especially in some of the kind of battle. If it's kind of multiple enemy, you can feel she even clears some of the case even slower than my other team, even like Kafka Dot or Jingli or Danheng. It kind of even feels slower because she's a little bit too single target though, in my opinion. So she kind of need a party to can cover that in AoE, which is maybe Jingyuan or Clara. If not, if she alone and it's multiple, it can be quite long time to finish though. Okay, so let's back to our main course, which is it Topaz actually a disappointing DPS or it's just a unique DPS? Well, in here, to be honest, I believe some of you will think very differently. So I would say it's very depend from what is your expectation. So again, it's back on your expectation. The answer is your expectation. So let's say if you decide to pull Topaz or you're planning to pull Topaz and you have the expectation like, wow, she will deal a massive crazy damage by herself, like how Danheng Imimeter Lune or Jingliu, then you might be disappointed with her own damage though, because it's not in their level though, to be honest. It's just he's below that though. It doesn't mean bad, I already say again, it's just like not as impressive as them. It's just like decent, okay, passable, like it's enough to clear everything, but it's not impressive. But if you kind of expecting like her as a character that, oh, I want a character that actually flexible, that can work as a DPS can, sub DPS can, or you kind of maybe like to play in the team where involving follow-up attacker like say Jingyuan or a Clara main, or maybe you want a future kind of to play in the future follow-up team, then you might be like her though, because she in those team, especially in the follow-up attacker, she actually very good. She makes my Clara looks like, what the hell? Like literally when first time I used with her with Clara, I already feel like, wow, why my Clara deals so much damage? And that's actually the buff from the. So if you kinda like in those things, then you might like her though. So in short, yeah, I will to say in my standard point, I say that she is actually more into unique DPS. It's not disappointing, but it's just like unique DPS where as a DPS, he can even become like buffer and become like sub DPS. And I would just say it's different than pure traditional DPS that their job is just purely like kind of dealing damage. So it's not kind of Danheng or Jingliu, Sela, something like that. So it's that thing if you want to relate similar like Kafka, where Kafka actually you can use in non-DOT team and still pretty good and decent. But however, if you put in DOT, she's actually looks very good and make other DOT character looks shining, right? So basically Topaz similar like Kafka, but for follow-up attacker though. So if you wonder should you pull for Topaz, so this is my recommendation after using her more than a week. Pull for Topaz if you're really into follow-up attacker, or at least you enjoy this kind of gimmick in follow-up attack and you want to make your follow-up attacker become stronger, let's say like Clara, Jingyuan, Himeko, or even future follow-up attack that maybe you kind of plan interest in type of gimmick, then yeah, pull for Topaz. And in addition, if you're just looking for secondary DPS or sub DPS in for your team, or a character that can fill in your hole in your team, then you can pull for Topaz because Topaz is just so flexible. It can just pull in any team and she can just work by herself though, because also she don't really drain so much SP, and also like everything gimmick doesn't really like require any like synergize, so she can just work by herself compared to kind of like Danheng. You cannot, right? Because Danheng quite restrictive in terms of team building because he quite consumptive if in terms of like skill points, so it's not as really as flexible as Topaz or something like that. However, I don't really recommend you to pull if you just want to aim just pure strong DPS by themselves though, because Topaz is no one of it. She is might deal decent damage, okay, passable at least in my standard, but she is not like super hyper carry what you imagine like Danheng with Lune or Jingliu. She is not on that level. And if you kinda expect Topaz with that level with Jingliu and Danheng, I'll assure you will disappoint. But I say again that she's not pure main DPS like them. She's not traditional, she's unique. She has trade-off with lower damage of herself but buffing follow-up attacker. So yeah, because of that, her main personal damage is not that high. So she is kind of unique type of DPS. So if you just want a traditional DPS, don't pull for her. Pull maybe Sele, Danheng, Blade, or Jingu, something like that. But in the end, she's still top ass for me. So yeah, that's pretty much it though for me. So if you like this kind of video, feel free to hit the subscribe button and like, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.